What on earth is going on with Kevin Rudd? Just weeks ago, he was sitting pretty in the lodge. He'd seen off the global economic crisis and the next election was in the bag. Then the wheels fell off. After a series of spectacular blunders and backflips, voters turned on him with a vengeance, and so have some in his party. There are even rumblings that he might be rolled as leader. It seems our PM has lost his mojo, but try telling him that.
I've always failed at this.
Okay.
On a cold night in Canberra this week, the Prime Minister is running late as always, even with the help of his daughter Jess.
Yeah, like that?
Okay, is it right?
Does that look right?
Look at Hello? It's the press gallery ball, and the PM is putting on a brave face for what he knows could be a chilly reception.
Tony, how are you? Thanks very much for coming.
Now, did you iron that shirt?
No.
Did anyone?
Huh?
Did anyone?
That is way harsh.
That's very hard.
Oh, no. You'll wear a coat though, won't you?
Oh, so mean.
I said you look really nice.
Thank you.
Did Nick Nees come last year? I can't remember.
It's a measure of the man he can still laugh.
Go this way?
With an unprecedented collapse in support from both the public and within his own party, his job could well be on the line.
Hey guys, how are you?
And it's not hard to see why. Fuel watch, gone. Grocery choice, gone. Home insulation, gone. Health reform, watered down and unresolved. Education revolution, an expensive mess. The emissions trading scheme, gone for now. Why wouldn't the electorate think you're failing them?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that our number one job these last couple of years has to be to keep the economy going. Sure, in a number of other areas, we've run into some difficulties. Things haven't gone according to plan. I fully accept that. But you'll learn from your mistakes. It's important to do that.
But with respect, Prime Minister, you're not on work experience. You're in the job now. I mean, how many mistakes do you need to make?
Well, what is basic to the entire country having a secure future? And the answer to that is to make sure the economy is functioning well. And obviously, some things went off track. I accept that. I admit that. The key to it is to learn from it.
But do you accept that some of the things that have gone off track are clearly unacceptable to the electorate? Because right now, you're on the nose. I mean, people aren't saluting you for keeping the economy running well.
Tara, people will make a judgment about me and the government when the election comes, based on a whole series of judgments.
But they're making a judgment now. I mean,
they've made judgments.
Approval rating is now 36%.
They've made judgments over a long period of time, sometimes higher and sometimes lower. That's true.
But within the Labor Party at the moment, it seems like the greatest challenge is Kevin Rudd. I mean, are you a liability as we sit here today?
We're determined to get on with this business. But you know something? There's a whole bunch of people who are equally determined that nothing happens. And they're throwing a huge amount at the government, and of course me as its leader, right now.
Today, Australia has looked to the future.
Those were the days. The honeymoon for Kevin 07 lasted well into 08 and even 09.
Too early to celebrate.
Yes, it is.
He steered us through the global financial crisis. Australia was one of the few lucky countries to survive pretty much unscathed.
This is about death.
Then came disasters like the deadly home insulation fires.
The death of 4 young Australians.
And the rorting of the so-called building the education revolution.
This is a disastrous waste of taxpayers' money.
But it was the total backdown on the emissions trading scheme, one of Rudd's most cherished and fundamental commitments, that has seen his approval ratings crash.
What we're simply talking about is making a proper assessment at the end of 2012.
This is a Prime Minister who doesn't have the courage of his convictions.
We look at Kevin Rudd in 2007 and he was cult-like. What's gone wrong?
A lot, obviously, because I think in 2007, this guy was the best campaigner I had ever seen. Better than Hawke. He was superb. Every single thing he did in 2007 was spot on. But that magic just isn't there today, and we're all looking for it to come back.
Unless it does, long-time Labor Party power broker Graham Richardson reckons Rudd is finished.
Here's the message to Canberra.
And it comes down to one issue.
The biggest resources taxes in the world.
The 40% super profits tax the government is trying to impose on the mining industry.
Hurt mining and you're hurting the whole of Australia.
What he's got to do is sit down, have a good look at himself, have a good look at the tax and fix it in the next week. He's just got to get rid of it.
Will he?
Very good question, but my sense is yes. I still have faith, and I think he'll settle it relatively quickly and then move on.
These are big issues and they affect us all. So
it was supposed to be the tax reform that would win him easy votes, robbing from the rich mining industry to pay the poor, more for super, roads and other tax cuts. Only problem is the electorate isn't buying it.
Weaken mining, you weaken the country.
You'd expect the electorate to embrace that, to say thank you, and yet they're not. Why is that?
Well, Tara, there's a huge fear campaign underway at the moment. It's a tough debate. They're throwing everything at it. Good luck to them. But we're determined to bring about decent and fundamental reform. These are tough and hard negotiations that we're engaged in. We intend to prosecute this reform.
And Rudd is digging in. Despite feverish speculation, his front bench plans to roll him as early as next week. If he doesn't solve the crisis immediately, he's prepared to slog it out for months.
But we'll prosecute them because this reform is right for the future of the country.
Will you compromise?
We've said from day one, and you know this, Tara, that we will consult and negotiate on detail, on implementation and transitional arrangements.
So negotiation, consultation, does compromise come into it?
Well, as I've...
you don't like the word compromise, do you?
Well, can I just say, it's just what we have been very plain about from day one. We've said we've got the rate of this tax about right. We've said that on detail, on implementation, on transitional arrangements, that we'll consult and we'll negotiate.
But if he makes any compromise on this mining tax, doesn't he look like the Prime Minister who cuts and runs like he did with the ETS?
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But I'd much rather the argument be, oh gee, he flip-flopped on this. I'd much rather that than to just keep going and say, I'm going to stick to my guns, doesn't matter what anyone thinks. It does matter what the electorate thinks. I don't think Labor's winning the argument. I think they're losing the argument. And I think that'll get worse day after day.
Here in the corridors of power at Parliament House, much of the talk is about Rudd's one-man band style of running the country, not seeking the advice of old hands in the party, not listening to his own cabinet. Criticism that seems to wash over him. Yeah, because you know your critics say that you're in love with power. Oh, there are so many of them.
I've got critics.
That you're in love with power. Maybe not so much in love with the ALP.
Oh, look, folk will be critical all the time.
This afternoon, this will be a very significant reform.
The problem with the perception is that this is a man who acts on his own, that he regards himself as being the font of all wisdom, and that if you don't follow his dictums, then you're in all sorts of strife.
This government of one is leaving many ministers disgruntled, shut out and angry. Is it a pattern of this government, under your leadership, not to include the hard heads of the Labor Party, the experienced people in the decision-making process?
On the big things that are out there, and have been for the last 2 years, my ministers, and I'm proud of each and every one of them, have done a first-class job using the processes of our Cabinet and our government.
And yet the ETS, which you'd have to admit is a pretty big thing, Environment Minister Peter Garrett reads about it being shelved on the front page of the newspaper. I mean, how humiliated and angry must he have felt at that time?
As you know, we don't go to the individual detail of individual meetings. We just don't do that.
Is it Kevin Rudd and Kevin Rudd only? I mean, you've been described as a control freak, somebody who cannot cop criticism from within his party, somebody who doesn't like debate and doesn't like to hear what he needs to hear. Is that you?
We have what I can describe as a very robust method of decision-making in our government. That's what Cabinet government's about. That's what our political party's about. We nut things through, we talk them through.
That may or may not be true, but here's the one person guaranteed to have the PM's ear. Therese, at a time like this when the pressure does seem on, what's it like to be the PM's wife?
Oh, it's always a joy. It's always a joy, yeah.
It's a joy they've shared for more than 3 decades.
Yeah, this is where Dad would occasionally have an amber fluid.
Did you sit outside and have a cherry cheer?
Yeah.
Therese Rein knows Kevin Rudd like no other.
The CWA hall.
You're going to go across
This
here?
is where Mum would come for the cake bakes.
what's shaped him as a man, even what's shaped his notorious bad language. Now, this goes to the very heart of running a country, but does the Prime Minister swear like a trooper at home?
Well, I think that...
Why, wash your mouth.
I have never ever seen Kevin swear at anybody, and he has never sworn at anybody in our family, ever, ever. But sometimes, you know, a strong word is a way of letting off steam. I'm okay with that.
Because you'd be aware, both of you obviously, of the talk that the swearing is put on a bit, that it's about trying to make you look more knockabout than perhaps you naturally are.
So Kevin grew up in country Queensland.
Where they never swore.
They never swore.
Never, ever.
Yeah, but the imputation is that you're pretending to be something you're not.
Okay, let me say, so I see Kevin being absolutely true to who he is and what he believes. Someone said, what's at the heart of Kevin Rudd? What drives Kevin Rudd is anger. Well, I've known him for nearly 35 years, and I can tell you that what drives Kevin Rudd is compassion, that he cares deeply about people. And that's what motivates, I'm going to get emotional, that's what motivates him, and that's what he cares about. He cares about the future of the country, he cares about people who are doing it tough, and that's what drives him, and that's who he is.
But while Therese may know what Kevin Rudd stands for, it seems much of the electorate doesn't.
Well, this is where I sit and work. This is the study here at the Lodge.
Like so many Prime Ministers before him, Kevin Rudd must now find a way to regain the public's lost confidence.
Actually, I'm the little guy at the front.
Would you accept your backflip on the ETS means people no longer believe you stand for anything?
My views on climate change have not changed one bit. You mentioned emissions trading. Let's just go to the core of this, Tara. 3 times we put an emissions trading bill to the Australian Parliament, and 3 times the Liberal Party rejected it.
How do you react then when you hear yourself described as a gutless wonder because of your backflip?
How can you, Tara, as a reasonable person, say that that is my fault? If it's an action by the Liberal Party to say, no, we have ratted on this deal, we're not going to support it, how on earth is that my responsibility?
But they're not calling the opposition gutless wonders, they're calling you a gutless wonder.
Well, I've just posed a question in reverse. On the core piece of fact here...
Is there anything worse in Australia to be called a gutless wonder?
Can I just say, people will reach their own judgments.
10 years. While Prime Minister, the Lodge is Kevin Rudd's home and sanctuary. Are you having rough days at the moment?
Oh no, it's you're designed for this. I mean, it's never...
How are you designed for it?
It's never smooth.
You'd think it couldn't get much rougher. There's talk the party wants to replace him with his deputy, Julia Gillard, dump him even before the election due at the end of the year. It's a long way to fall for a man who until recently was considered untouchable. Just finally, if somebody within the party was brave enough to tap you on the shoulder and say, you are a liability, you've got to go, before the election, would you stand aside?
I'll be leading the Australian Labor Party and this government into the next election, whenever it's held.
Do you think Julia Gillard would make a good Prime Minister?
We've been through thick and thin together, and she is a fantastic first-class minister, a fantastic and first-class Deputy Prime Minister, and she's going to make a fantastic Prime Minister as well.
When?
In the future. She's
not
great.
Right now?
She's great.
Hello, I'm Amelia Adams. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for our brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.